Welcome back, everybody, to the June 7th recording of the Z Rebels Technical Water Cooler event hosted by the System Z Enthusiast Discord. We had yet another incredible event that I can't wait for you to see the recording of in a moment. We talked about topics such as what technologies does a mainframer need to know to be effective in the integrated IT landscape that we exist in today. That topic shifted to yet another conversation about terminology and why do we use the words that we use, which then transformed into what new languages, programming languages, will we like to see on ZOS and what value do they add to the platform. We had a lot of demonstrations of what a really good attitude the System Z Enthusiast Discord puts on by helping explain some foundational topics in terms that everyone could understand. And as we wrapped up the event, we talked about two really important announcements that I'd like to put in front of you. But you can always watch the full recording to hear these announcements at the end. It's about the last 10 minutes, but I'd love to put them in front of you. So why don't we shift gears over to that right now? So what is the big announcement? I am so proud to announce that we will be taking the user-focused nature of the water cooler events and bringing them to life in person under the name ReIPL. On Tuesday, August 6th in Kansas City, ReIPL will launch as an evening-length event aiming to reimagine face-to-face interactions. And we'd love for you to join us either virtually on Discord or in person as we transform the way that information is shared from vendor-driven suggestions to user insights and experiences. We hope that this event will evolve our conversations from lectures to dialogues that serve to augment and drive mainframe technology with community insights. Fortunately, we can't do this alone. That's why I'm asking for you to get involved by volunteering to help shape this event. Much like the System Z enthusiast community, ReIPL doesn't aspire to be my vision or your vision, but a community-shaped vision attacking problems collaboratively using an open source model. So here's my call to action. We need you to volunteer your ideas, your time, and your inspiration to make this event the best-in-class hybrid event for participants in person and online. So why should you volunteer? Well, not only will you be at the ground level of something fantastic, but I can promise you will be given some very exclusive, one-time only swag for your efforts. But don't just take my word for it. Take it from these unsolicited testimonies from early volunteers.
Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm helping.
Incredible. And this one.
Hey mainframers, it's me, Joe. I'm excited to volunteer for the RE:IPL event, hosted at Share, Kansas City. I hope you'll join me, Joe, and lend your voice and input, as a volunteer helping to create an event that is as community focused as users need. See you there. Cut.
I hope those incredible testimonies whet your appetite to be a volunteer for ReIPL in August. If you'd like to be a volunteer, please get plugged into our Discord community by going to discord.gg/SZE or click the link in the description of this video and contact me, Steven Perva, or one of the moderators in the community. Feel free to also reach out on LinkedIn and we'll get you plugged into the private community that's helping organize this event. I hope you enjoy the recording and I'll see you on Discord.
Fire away.
This is the beginning. Okay, so I'm gonna go through my spiel. If you've been here before, you're gonna make sure you get yourself comfortable, get your drink ready. So welcome back, everybody, to the 5th. We just had a conversation about this. It's the 5th, I think, Z Rebels Technical Water Cooler, the 4th one that we recorded. You should know what we're here for by now, but if you're new to here, welcome. I'm going to do some quick reminders because last time I did this, I was told that this was way too long. So here we go. We are here to share ideas, challenges, and collaborate on where the industry needs to go. Last time our topic was modernization, whatever that might mean to you. So I'll be sharing links to the previous sessions as part of my quarterly reminder. Now, rules. To keep our community as hospitable as it needs to be, you will need to deal with me reminding you of these rules. 1. Mutual respect. Do not disrespect other people in the chat or on voice. There's no tolerance for discriminatory statements on things like race, age, gender, disability, etc. 2, elitism, no good. Do not insult or belittle other people based on their opinions or preferences. There will be strong opinions here. We must respect that. 3, do not share any information that you're not able to share. That's things like intellectual property, topics under NDA, or anything else that you don't have permission to share. 4, finally, everyone, unless they specifically call out otherwise, is representing themselves. Their views don't constitute the views of any organization and should only be considered their own. That is it for rules. You know that we're recording this session as usual, so get out if you don't want to be recorded, please. Remember that this conversation is not about what I think or what my co-host thinks, but it's about what you, the community, want to talk about. So please don't hesitate to introduce a question, topic, or whatever topical thing you want once we open the floor for discussion. Anyone and everyone is welcome to bring a topic to the table. After last week's topic on modernization or declunkification or integration or whateveration, Frank has decided that he is too afraid to sit on the stump for this conversation, and I was asked if Pat Sajak was leaving Wheel of Fortune to host the water cooler based on Frank's remarks. And while I cannot confirm the rumor about Pat Sajak is true, we have brought on an even more relevant and fearless Emma Skovgaard to take Frank's place today and provide the color commentary. So everyone, please, in the chat, give a warm welcome or as close to a Danish thank you as you can to Emma for rising to the occasion. The format of the water cooler goes like this. In a moment, we'll open the floor for someone to bring our first topic, or Emma and I will introduce something if you're all being too shy, and we'll all start talking about it. If there's something you want to talk about, you're free to post it in the chat, which you can get to by the little chat bubble icon somewhere on the interface, or you can raise your hand using the hand icon, and we'll bring you on stage to share your thoughts. Once you've shared your thoughts, we'll kindly ask that you leave the stage so that we can have room for other people to hop in. Don't leave the event, just leave the stage. If you have something that you want to add later, please just raise your hand again and we'll bring you right on back up to add. I do have some announcements, but we're going to be getting to that at the tail end of this event. You really can't expect Metallica to open the show with Enter Sandman. That all being said, I'm going to pitch it over to Emma to bring up anything that I've forgotten, or Emma will open the floor for our first topic. So, Emma?
The first topic today is how much non-mainframe technology should we expect mainframers to know? This is something I've been thinking a lot about lately, and I was hoping. We already have our first. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you. It is my opinion that we shouldn't have mainframers and non-mainframers. We should have IT experts. And so my thought is that I like working with a cross breed of folks. So I have people who I've worked with who have been mainframers for 40 years or whatever, and folks who have never even heard of the mainframe. And I make both of them useful for what projects I need done, right? So that depending on what their skill sets are, there's still a wide variety of things that they can get done. So what skills do they need? They just need whatever skill sets they need to get their job done. So I work with a bunch of DevOps folks. They didn't even know what ZOS was, and yet I made them very useful in Unix system services after about 3 weeks of me explaining what code pages are, stuff like that. It doesn't take a whole lot to get that ramped up. So I don't know that we necessarily have to have everything understood. We just have to understand what we need to do so we can get stuff done.
Yeah. Sean says, hot take, mainframers should know Unix. Good programmers. So there's two perspectives here. There's the infrastructure perspective, and then there's the application development perspective. Does anybody want to represent the application development perspective? Because I am not an application developer. I don't know if Emma is. And David, I believe you're mostly in the infrastructure realm as well. So that's something I'd like to see if someone wants to kind of add to that.
I'm in the DevOps space, so I'm kind of in the middle of the applications and infrastructure. So
nice.
Kind of similar to David, that I can represent both, but my main role is going to be app dev. Came into this as an individual who didn't know mainframes prior to his position in IBM, but I've learned a lot about, mostly app dev, a little bit of IT, as I've been working with David to try to introduce some of the CIOs, CI/CD practices and things like that for pipelines. And that's a whole journey for me, and it's something I'm actually really proud of personally. A little rubber stamp for myself. I really would love to see it sort of expanded, as a lot of the people that I can talk to and try to help diagnose their issues with mainframes, I think could have a lot of improvements in their mindsets if they're able to learn some practices outside the mainframe and try to relate them.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that the more we can kind of raise the low bar, and I guess I don't want to try to drive this to a controversial point, but perhaps I do. It does seem like there's definitely a difference between what generations of people understand about technology because of what they came up with. So I would like to think that digital natives, people like I would argue that I'm a digital native, even though I didn't have a computer until I was like a few years old. We experience IT in a different way than people who started college, and their first experience with a computer was because colleges had a computer and they got to use them there. That's different. So I wonder what it means to continue to learn as someone who isn't at the point where I'm like, yeah, you know, I don't really need to learn anymore. But I see people like Lionel Dyke, who is a lifelong learner, constantly learning new things, and I kind of am curious about what Lionel's methodology is. And Ray, I saw you came off mute. You're one as well. Someone who just is consistently hungry for more knowledge and not saying, well, I don't need to know that because I'm almost done.
Yeah. I'm sorry, waiting for a truck to pass. Yeah, I've always, my very strong opinion is the instant you lose that yearning to learn something new, that's the beginning of cognitive decline. You know, I went back to school at age 45. I didn't have my bachelor's. It was kind of a goal for me. And so I did it the long way. It took 5.5 years. But I finally got my bachelor's, my business degree, which unfortunately made things a lot clearer, some of the weird things I'd seen over the years in my career. But I still want to learn new things. Like, first of all, hey, I figured out this Discord thing. One problem I have had is that the opportunities, especially using, at my place of employment, sometimes get to be difficult. That the management will say, oh, you don't need to learn that, but I do, which then puts it into my copious spare time. And that sometimes is a hindrance as well. But I still want to learn these things. I want to get more into the Linux and that side. The product I'm working on has a VS Code interface, and the people that work on that were saying, "Hey, anybody want a shadow?" And I raised my hand because that's it's a platform. It's something current and useful, and I just want to satiate my curiosity. But again, that's me.
Sure. Marcus, you jumped on stage.
Yeah, I started my career on the mainframe, and then I went into DB2 on the mainframe, and then the company I was working for, they installed DB2 on an AIX box. So they said, hey, you use DB2, you can use DB2 on AIX. So I had to learn AIX. Then we had DB2 on OS2. Hands up who remembers OS2. So I had to learn OS2. And then version 5 of DB2 LUW came out, UDB it was called then, and that was on Windows. Then company I worked for, another company, they said, hey, we've got DB2 on iSeries. Would you mind learning iSeries? And so, after about 5 years, that I've already mastered like 4 or 5 operating systems. And I think Sandil Nathan just made a comment. Non-framers do not understand the mainframe, so unfortunately mainframers have to be the people who understand the other side. That's so true. and people who don't know the mainframe, they are. I don't want to be disrespectful, but I call them monoglots. They only speak one language. I'm from Wales, so we speak English and Welsh, and you can throw a little bit of French, German, and Italian in as well because of holidays. But people who don't speak more than one language, they're a little bit limited in their thinking. So it's the mainframers, they have to be that glue between speakers of other operating systems.
Right. We had Chris hop on. Chris, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I certainly agree with the sentiment that the broader your technology knowledge that you have, across mainframe, across distributed, whatever that is, that's a benefit to everyone. It's a benefit to us and our careers, benefits to the companies we work for, and all of that. But 2 points I want to make on that. One, as an individual, none of us can know everything. I know enough about Linux to use it, but don't ask me, to install it or get deep into the guts. I'm going to need a Linux expert, just like we're still going to need mainframe experts on pieces. Mm-hmm. But we need to know how to talk to each other. And one of the challenges that I see, and I'm with IBM, so I don't know if people who work non-IBMers or other companies have any insight into this, but I see that there's silos at some of the companies who use the mainframe. We have the mainframe department, and then we have the distributed department, and there seems to be a wall between them that is difficult to overcome, and someone has to reach out. Should they reach out? Yes. Should we reach out as well? Yes. But someone has to take the first step, and just to at least engage in those conversations, I think is very important for all of us. To understand each other, and because there are common languages that we do have.
It's just, I'm piggybacking off that common languages statement there. I think part of the problem that we have is that we use different words for the exact same thing between mainframe and distributed, right? The concept is exactly the same thing. You have things like syslink or symbolic links, you have aliases. Effectively the same thing, but we choose to use different terms for these things. And my point with that is, I've been able to take people who are mainframers and show them distributed concept very easily just by giving them a few. By the way, this is all this means is you're doing this and it means this. Kind of a statement, and they're like, okay, no big deal. And it's been true the exact opposite direction as well, right? Or I can take a distributed person and make them very, make them work on the mainframe very easily just by saying, all you have to do is run this command and it is equivalent to doing this. And it's just because we're using different words. That's the only reason why this is complicated.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been pushing in IBM is to get rid of some of the mainframe specific jargon, right? We say IPL, we don't say boot. Why? Well, I know why. We said IPL before there was boot, but once the rest of the industry took over, why don't we just say boot, right? Why do we have to push tracks and cylinders for defining the sizes of data sets? Why? We could just do what everybody else does, but it's that kind of thing where we're just hanging on to these old terms and these old ways of doing things because we're hanging on to them. We don't need that. We just do. And that's a real problem because it makes it look weird and strange and different. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. And just to clarify, I agree with what was just said. I shouldn't have said common language. I should have really said, common concepts, because it's the same concepts that we get across. And I'm with TPF, which is a niche OS on Z. And we use different words for things even compared to ZOS. So we even have to, even on the Z platform, we have to translate to our ZOS peers, which gets to be a pain. But it's all the same concepts.
Hey, Chris, that's why the TPF guys sit in the basement. They can't let you upstairs in the sunlight.
They'll learn too many terms.
Well, you know what? As long as we're not in the news, we're happy, because that means we're in the background working.
Like lightning working. right? Like lightning.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I mentioned this in the comments, and I won't hang on stage too long, but from a development perspective, if we're doing things right, the developers shouldn't need to know whether they're running on mainframe or distributed in the cloud, whatever. They should be saying, I need these set of services, and I'm going to use these set of services. And it's our responsibility, not as mainframers, but as infrastructure people, for figuring out what's the best way to provide that capability.
So I think I'm getting the hang of this app. So I'm coming on and off a little bit. I want to add another problem with the terminology is it makes us look old. Especially to people. I remember when I was an intern entering the field, it made everything about working on felt archaic, needlessly so. And I know that we had a hard time having people in their 20s want to work for us for that reason. And I imagine it's changing everywhere. I mean, but terminology is such a hard thing to change. We've tried to change terminology, and kind of comes brute force. I remember now. It's been a while since I worked in DBM core development, but I remember there was a push for management stop calling storage, and start calling it memory. And people rolled their eyes who'd been doing it for 30 years, and it was like pulling teeth. And I still think that people call it storage instead of memory. And then you have to deal with things like old documentation and old source code where everything's calling it storage. And then it's not as easy as saying, okay, stop using that terminology, even though we should stop using that terminology because it's archaic.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say it internally. It's one thing to have it in the documentation. The source code can say whatever it says. It's not worth going through all that. But we can at least present a public face that hey, we're like everyone else, but man, we do these things really good. Stop pretending we're the crotchety old guy in the corner. Back in my day, no, you just look foolish then. Show what we're better at. Show what makes us better and differentiates us, and then hide all the other annoying things that make us that much more difficult to work with.
I've actually been catching up, and I have to thank Anthony for pointing me at this, the Advent of Computing podcast, where it's been interesting because in one of the early ones, I want to say around episode 20, he kind of takes a detour and starts talking about this exact concept here about IBM calling it storage, and everybody calls it memory. And before it was IPL, it was ICPL. That's actually, he mentions that in his first floppy disk episode, which IBM invented because they wanted to update the microcode on the 370. That's how old that goes back. But it is a thread that pops up on and off and on in his in his episodes, because there was IBM and then everybody else kind of centralized on something else. And unfortunately, it has been a differentiator and not a good one necessarily. Yeah, we have the best fault-tolerant platform out there, but then, again, we have this people, the memory storage thing, as it's been going on in the chat. We've never gotten past disk architecture with cylinders and tracks. I will say that on the VM and the VSE side, they at least had the VA devices, which, seriously make a lot more sense and is, for the non-IBM platforms, that's the way they look at devices. Of course, now it's all RAID and it's all virtualized anyway, but still, it's the concept. We talked about this in an earlier thing about how difficult it would be to, the external interface of storage being, make it look like everything else out there and just internalize the tracks and cylinders, which theoretically should be easy to do, but it seems like there are a lot of issues in that regard. There is a lot of big technical debt in the 360 and forward family, and it's going to take a lot of effort to erase some of that, at least in the interfaces.
I know Leonard came on stage. Leonard, did you have something you wanted to add before the window is moved on?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I could mention is you know, my favorite is like when I need to increase the size of my ZFS on like a system, or I need to request the user ID. And you know, the system programmers are so used to the cylinders and tracks, so I'll be like, oh, can I get a ZFS with 2 gigabytes? And I'm like, I have such and such amount of tracks, or I have such and such amount of cylinders. And it's like, you know, that's meaningless to me. You know, it's like talking about Fahrenheit, you know, outside of United States. You know, it's just meaningless. Can't contextualize it.
I know IBM tried to accommodate the gigabytes and megabytes specifications in the JCL, and place where I was at once tried to implement that, and my goodness, in JCL it was just very difficult to. It made me nervous because I didn't know how much storage I was getting in terms of cylinders and tracks. I thought, oh my gosh, is this going to take up a whole volume? Is it? So we're kind of used to thinking like that, and I know it's different. I really wanted to bring up the word heap. I haven't heard that mentioned yet. That's one I have a hard time with because it sounds so disrespectful. Like storage, memory, okay, but heap, whoa.
But
like, that's like different.
Are you
a specific type of memory? That's a C-ism. You know,
Yeah,
you ask the shared library, hey, I need some memory, and it carves off a specific part of your address space for that, as opposed to the stack. So it's not so much disrespectful, it's a reference to a particular part of memory that's acquired in a particular way.
Yeah, it's an IBM. Heap is not specific to IBM.
So,
how much is a heap only part of a whole memory? Does it depend on how it's acquired? It's still a mystery to me.
If you're using C, generally the memory allocation methods, such like malloc, realloc, and the others, they acquire some memory from the heap, which the system gives to you, returns you a pointer, and that's some amount of memory. And then when you're done with it, you return that. And it frees you up from having to worry about where that memory is. You don't care. You're not manually managing memory offsets and stuff like you had to do in the bad old days.
It seems like an unnecessary term. I could just call it storage. I mean, if a heap is acquired storage from like a sub amount of some kind that's acquired from memory in general.
So typically, if you're on like a PC or something like that, you're going to be getting that the heap is going to be one part of the memory map for where your program's running, and the stack is going to be going from the other direction. So this way, hopefully the two never meet. The stack grows automatically as you go through functions and automatically declare variables, and then as you ask for things, the heap is persistent through function calls. Where something that's an automatic variable, like C does that, you say, I enter a function, I declare things. They pop on automatically, pop off when you exit that particular function. So they're just different names for memory.
It has a specific meaning, though, where it has characteristics that are somewhat different from just generic memory. Well, that's good to know. I'll know now that when I hear that term, I know that in some way there's a specific reference to what's going on with that usage of memory.
I saw.
And actually,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I actually have noticed that, there does seem to be that confusion in the LE languages world. In that, some get it, but there's quite a few people that don't understand the difference between the heap and the stack. And it is, even it's like I knew the difference, but I didn't actually make the connection for quite a while. It's like, oh yeah, okay, that totally makes sense now. Even though I knew heap was used for malloc and stuff, for some reason my brain just didn't, put two and two together. And again, maybe that's an education thing. I think sometimes there's some assumptions that are made that people will just pick it up, but not everybody learns the same way. And I think that's why, it's like the old thing about acronyms. You always put what an acronym stands for the very first time you mention it, IPL, initial program load, and you should, and even if you're in an advanced publication or, something that's peer reviewed, you still want to do that because you don't know your audience.
I saw we had Rob S. come on stage. I want to make space for Rob to say something if there was something to be said. All right, I did.
Rob, you're on mute, by the way.
Here we go.
There you go.
Oh, back on mute. Go ahead, Rob. All right, there was something I did want to read out in the chat while Rob figures out what he's got going. There was someone who said that some of the mainframe-isms almost makes it feel like it's an exclusive club and that some of the quote-unquote younger people enjoy that. Is there anybody have any opinions on that? And I can believe that. I can see that might feel exclusive or interesting. But is that a functional mechanism for anything we as an industry are trying to accomplish? Any thoughts?
So just by the platform being different?
That's what it sounded like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
personally, I storage memory, it applies universally to just, RAM, ROM, those are all terms I know well. And I'm okay with it, and whatever. I don't think it's exclusive.
Yeah, well, and the thing with terminology, 'cause I mean it's hard to get away from the esoteric terminology, and I think in a lot of cases, just since we use terminology to refer to the same things, don't I forget who was mentioning it, but like don't treat everything like it's obvious. It's like when someone says this is just this, then everything all the dots connect. It's like, oh, a step lib is just like live path, and then everything made sense. It's that goes a long way. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't try and move towards better terminology, but in the meantime, that's incredibly helpful.
John,
it's just a computer. It's just a very big computer with a lot of good reliability characteristics.
Did you want to chime in, John?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm muted or not.
No, you're good.
Nope, we can hear you. You're perfect.
Awesome. No, just discussion is great. I mean, I love. Somebody said earlier, like storage. Why do we call?
Now we lost them.
There is a distinction between, say, virtual memory and real memory, and universal across computers. And then, yeah, I really got.
You're dropping out, John.
I'm like, wow, now I know what it must be like for people on the other side. I'm hearing them talked about it as if.
All right, we get cross sections.
Call that memory. Why can't that just be virtual memory or real memory? It's like, well, you have to know stack and heap. I'm like, all I know at heap is it has something to do with Java, and to me, it doesn't help the perception of Java being a pig, because the word heap sounds like
radio edit.
Oh no, I'd love to have heard the word.
Not being application, my role is like make sure the apps don't get everything. C being this large shared ecosystem, and shared is the key word. So I don't want.
All right, John, you were kind of chiming in and out there, so we'll see if you're still going.
Oh, I see that.
Okay. Cool. I think that the gist, there was one moment there where you said heap means, and
Or is like,
exactly.
we lost.
It was
Sorry
a very
about that,
it was a very on brand moment. So maybe I'll add a beep there in post for the recording. That'll be nice if you don't mind.
No, not at all. You mean I was using my outside voice by accident? I hate when that happens.
There you go.
We didn't hear the word.
Yeah.
You said something
Oh,
like, it's like,
You're out here, and we need you down here. Alrighty.
yeah. Yeah, I guess the concept to me, only place I know the term heap is associated with Java. And
Well, that's because Java's going to be managing all that stuff for you. You know, it's just doing all the allocations under the covers.
Mm-hmm.
They made the design decision. We're going to abstract away all that nasty, memory management from C, right or wrong. You know, you can argue it's made Java successful, but it's also caused a lot of pain early on, just with the garbage collection and stuff. I think we're finally finding a nice middle ground with Rust, because that addresses a lot of the real memory design flaws, if you will, of C, but also really gives you the performance that other languages like Java and Go don't always give. You know, that garbage collector popping up at the worst time can be an issue. But yet, C is really difficult to write securely. So I think as an industry, we're finally trending in that right direction for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I do think that's a good addition. I think that for me, I've always believed that language and how we talk about things is functional, right? As time passes, certain languages or dialects disappear. If they don't serve a function, they likely won't consistently stay around. So if cylinders, tracks, and all of that does not continue to serve people well because it just doesn't compute, for lack of a better way of describing it to them, they may or may not just stop doing that. So I do think that over time, as generations move on, we likely will stop seeing some of these traditional mainframey terms, specifically ZOSy terms. So yeah. I know that it is 8:40. I don't know if we want to dovetail into a new topic or anything, or do we want to keep talking about this topic? If anyone has anything they'd like to talk about, please raise a hand, let us know, or add to this conversation about terminology and what people are meant to know to be a mainframer per se.
Actually, I'd like to detour into some chat topic, and that's the language Rust. And if Anthony brought it up already, I just want to point out that over in one of the ZOS Open Tools channels, Igor posted a link to an IBM idea about putting Rust on ZOS. I know there's been a little bit of internal chatter about porting the compiler, and I know that very recently, suddenly the calls for Rust on ZOS have literally exploded. If you're really interested in it, please go over to IBM Ideas, registered trademark, and vote up that idea, because that will show the compiler powers that be that there is definite interest in it. And yeah, I would love to see Rust on the mainframe. It's, we talked about, the whole memory things that Java and some of the other languages kind of don't do well for garbage collection. And, secure. And as someone mentioned there, some Python packages have code written in Rust, which means they could not be ported to ZOS. So anyway, just throwing that out there. And then I think as Steven said, if anybody has any other topics or suggestions or continuing this conversation.
So I would argue that last part is more important, because if a lot of the open source tools are being moved to use Rust in the back end, like Python stuff, that will screw us up on the platform at some point if that gets widespread adoption. So I think it would be a good idea to start on that early for sure.
I kind of wish Igor here.
Yeah. We finally got Joe on stage. Joe, did you want to chime in on something that?
I mean, this is a really interesting conversation, and I've noticed the same intrusion of Rust into the Python space as well. And there are people smarter than me about these topics, anonymously lurking in the shadows, and I won't rat them out here. But they, everybody's aware that Rust would be a good thing to bring to the platform, and it's definitely something I think we're going to leverage a lot in the future. I think it's certainly a direction that we're going to need to go in. And I look forward to working with Rust too. But I'm always a bit, whenever somebody comes up with a new language and saying, oh, it solves all these problems, look at all these things that we've been challenged with. I'm always wary of the unknown challenges that are going to exist with the new language as well. So, I'm cautiously optimistic that Rust is going to be a good thing. I think it will be. It'll move us in the right general direction. It won't. Obviously, we all know it won't solve all our problems, though.
Well, it's not new. Rust has been around for quite a while, so it's not the latest JavaScript framework du jour. And Mozilla, they've rewritten much of the Firefox browser in it, so it's certainly battle tested. Is it going to be perfect? No, I'm sure it won't be, but it might be the right thing at the right time finally.
Right. And I think that's what gives us. I think that's what gives us all hope that this really is going to solve some real problems and not just heap more on top of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one thing Joe talks about the unknowns. One of the things about Go is that it's basically it doesn't have support for dynamic calls. You gotta pull everything in, and that does create some extremely humongous executables. And people have kind of started to notice that as they start doing more complicated things with Go under USS. And that's the thing, something may be lurking out there with Rust in the future, but I don't think that has popped up yet. Everybody really seems to love it. Even outside mainframe and stuff, a lot of the chatter I see out there, just people seem to be very happy with it.
So I guess I'll jump in a little bit here. Having looked at a bit of Rust and studied it on the ZOS side, there's an interesting thing that comes up when you talk about Rust. There's a lot of people who are very quick to raise their hand and suggest that yes, these are very good things, and I want these, and I completely believe that. However, when you kind of poke at, okay, well, what would you do with Rust? You tend to run into a brick wall very quickly, right? And so I'm glad we just brought up Go, because there's an interesting thing there, right? So when we looked at Go, the same kind of thing. Whether or not people kind of got traction or adoption was an interesting thing, because it's such a fast evolving language, right? And Rust is even faster than Go. So I think I heard a quote, it was around 6 weeks to kind of go from release to release. So if you could imagine, in your typical ZOS environment, are you willing to sort of chase a language from release to release, in a 6 week kind of window? So I absolutely believe in the merits of the Rust language and what's there, but I'm curious what folks on this panel think around the questions, regarding sort of I would put it sort of on the extreme end of the iteration and moving forward scheme, and I'm curious what others think here.
I think there's a call to just give a basic high level of what Rust is. I know that John was curious, and I know that there might be other people that listen to this that might be interested in just knowing what Rust is and why is anybody even talking about it. Would anybody want to tackle that feels authoritative on the subject? I certainly am not.
I mean, I'll give us as bit of a summary as I can. So Rust is a new programming language. It was sort of developed, I think it was out of Mozilla. And the idea was they were sort of getting tired of all of the issues regarding their C and C++ code stacks, right? So they had all the typical memory safety issues and things of that nature. And so it was born out of, it was one of those languages born out of pain. So what they did was they kind of took, this is my personal opinion, but sort of best practices or some of the best innovations that we've seen in a lot of the modern languages. So they took from JSON, from Node.js, the package management stuff and built that kind of in. They kind of borrowed the C syntax and things of that nature. And then they also, started to take in some of the facilities from Go in terms of parallelism. And then they started adding in things like memory safety. And I think this is where people really kind of gravitate to Rust, is Rust tries to change its position to be safe by default. So what it does is it makes it much more onerous on the developer to be expressive about their intentions, right? So we all know C, you kind of have that pointer and you can go off and do whatever you want kind of thing. In Rust, the default is actually not that. You have to go through, extenuating paths to actually make that happen. And so that's the reason people are starting to really gravitate and like Rust, is because you have to be that expressive and that intentional about how you're using memory and things of that nature. It starts to preclude whole categories of bugs, right? So it takes away sort of those classic bad practices that have been present in C and C++ in particular over the years. So high level summary of Rust, right? There's talk that it is great at performance as well. So I think that kind of depends on what you look at as usual, but I think that kind of gives you the idea of the different things that people really value in Rust today and why it's got a lot of interest, right? Especially in this security, vulnerability, conscious and aware world we live in today. So I'll stop there and see if anybody else wants to add.
No, thank you, Chad, for that overview. And I don't know if anyone wants to tag on to that, but I do have a couple. Go ahead, Anthony.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, I read there was an interesting blog article a while back about the Mozilla folks, how they rewrote part of the rendering core of Firefox in Rust. And one of the things they said that after things that had stabilized with the language, they were able to really not have to worry about that memory safety, and they were able to get a lot better parallelism about it. And they said it was just so surprising because, like experts that spend like all time in C++ and they're really, really good at it, kept running into race conditions and just memory issues, and they're really, really hard to track down. And converting it to Rust, it just worked. And it was kind of shocking because these problems just literally didn't exist, and they were able to be, really push the parallelism as hard as it would go, and it was just rock solid because the language, it eliminated that particular class of bug. And they said it was honestly like really, really surprising for them. So that sold me on it from like a design standpoint. I haven't coded in it much yet because it's not available on my platform of choice, but that's what I'm looking for. So. And I'll shut up now. You can do your announcements.
No, you're good. You're good. I see Marcus is waiting in the wings to speak, and I will drag you up here in a second, Marcus. I do want to get through a couple announcements here as we start to close out the conversation, because I know that Frank had teased a few things that I wanted to talk about. So the first thing I do want to announce is, well, one, I want to thank everybody for being here and sticking it out. This is probably the biggest audience that we have, for better or worse, but it's been quite a journey here. But first, I do want to announce that we're having what we're calling a Z Rebels academic water cooler. The illustrious Herb Daly of Wolverhampton fame has asked to bring together some top minds in the academic orbit of mainframes and have them join forces to talk about the role of academia and the role of academics in moving the mainframe platform forward. There are a lot of unknowns, especially for people like me, on how the world of academia works and why the answer of the question, why don't we just teach more mainframes, has a more nuanced answer than just because we can. That talk is going to take place next week. That's 12:30 Central U.S. time on the 17th of June. I'll put a event on the calendar. So that's not next week, but it's the week following. And that session is going to follow this typical water cooler format, but it's going to be focused on the group of academics and the smart people talking and answering our questions and hearing our opinions about what we think about the academic world. So from what I understand, this group is really excited and inspired by what we've had going on here, and they want to have a similar challenging conversation about tough topics out loud in front of all of us. So I hope that everybody here will find themselves interested in joining that session. Again, that's going to be 12:30 Central US on June 17th, and I'll talk more about that across Discord and LinkedIn in case you all forget. But the announcement that I really wanted to make is a call to action for some of you, but it's about a project that's been in the works in my brain for a fair minute now, but it's soon to spill out in either a glorious or not so spectacular way. In August, myself and some of the System Z enthusiast community are creating an evening event during Share where we can all gather and start evolving this group into something that's a little bit more. I've long held the belief that this community is indicative of how technical communities should be. That's user-driven. The event that we're putting together is aspiring to be the next evolution of how people in the mainframe industry gather. We want to be more than just sitting in an audience listening to someone speak and then moving to the next room and sitting in the audience and listening to someone speak. We believe that community is this. It's talking to one another, sharing ideas, sharing things like code, sharing things like experiences, different ideas, successes and failures. And the event that we're putting on in August is the first step to expanding that paradigm we've established here into the real world. So as for details, we do have the basics already figured out. We know the date. We know the time that this is going to happen. We know we're going to have food. We know we're going to have drinks. But most importantly, we have opportunities for people like yourselves to get in at the ground level of something hopefully exciting. And I'm looking for people who are interested in being part of putting this together. Much like this community, the event isn't a space to be just my vision or your vision, but our collective vision for a meaningful technical community. We want this to be a space that is designed specifically for genuine interaction that isn't distracted by parties that are trying to sell things. So please, if you'd like to be a part of this event as part of planning or even just to attend, let me know. I'm going to share more specific details as things go on, but for now, just know this. It's not going to cost you anything to be a part of this. You're going to be fed. You're going to have things to drink, and we're going to be doing our damnedest to make sure that everything that's happening at this event is going to be broadcast live to Discord. So the openness you know and love from this community will be apparent in this event as well. So don't feel like you have to be there to participate. Please just shoot me a message on Discord or shoot me a message on LinkedIn and let me know you're interested in helping, preferably a direct message. Don't just kind of tag me out like that. And I'll tag you into the Discord little section that we're putting together for people who want to participate in helping us put this together. I see Frank came off mute, so that's either concerning or interesting. I'll let you kind of say a few things, Frank, if you'd like, and then I'll kind of close up the event.
Well, first, I want to know, what would you call such a event?
You have to wait to find out. There's a name in the works, but I do kind of cook it. I want to cook it up a little bit and pass it through a few of the. I've been known to be in trouble for names every once in a while. Things that I name sometimes get me into slight tad bits of trouble. So we will see what the name is going to be, and we'll talk about that more later.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this idea. I was lucky enough to have a conversation with Steve about it yesterday and a few days ago. So I really think it's something that we all really need to be investing time and effort in. And I'm hoping that there are a swath of people who are here that want to be part of the planning of some of the details.
Yeah, it's gonna be really cool. Well, at least in theory, it's really cool. This community started as something that was in theory really cool, and to be honest with you all, it's kind of blown up into something that I find to be extremely fascinating. And I'm very excited about where we've come, especially with events like this. If you like what we're doing here, this will effectively be that, but kind of if it's gone a bit more scaled up. I didn't want to say crazy, but it's not going to be crazy. I hope not. But yeah, so I'd love to hear what everyone thinks and if they'd like to participate in being a part of it. Just to be very clear, it's not about making money. It's just going to end up as evidence as to why I've gone bankrupt eventually, and we'll all be good. So I think we are at the last end, and I apologize for monopolizing the last few minutes of the conversation. So I really do hope that everybody enjoys these events and will see us more. There's a ton of chat channels here on the side for you to come be a part of. I know some of you pop in for just these events. We'd love to have you kind of here more regularly if you'd like to consider talking about these type of topics more than just once every few weeks. But I think that what we'll do is we will have our next event sometimes later this month. We're a bit early this month, so we'll definitely have one more, and we'll keep you posted on what's going on with the evolution of this event that we're putting together and the evolution of this community as well. So thank you all for being here. On behalf of probably Emma and probably Frank, thank you for being here, but I won't speak for them, so I do really appreciate y'all being here, and we'll keep you posted on what's going on in the community. So thanks, everybody. Feel free to mingle in the other channels, but I'm going to shut this one down, and have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks so much.
Enjoy.
Thank you, Steven.
Bye.
Thanks, Steve.